Welcome to Deep Insights, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on why business teams are still buried in manual work and stuck with outdated software stacks. Where we'll look at the broken systems, the spreadsheet chaos, and the lack of real-time insights that slow companies down, and how AI and modern technology are finally flipping the script. My name is Daniel Zahavi, and today's guest is Mike Dauber. Mike's a GP at Amplify Partners, and for over a decade, he's backed technical founders and early-stage startups across developer tools, data infrastructure, and vertical AI. Mike has led investments from the rise of cloud and mobile to today's AI revolution, combining deep technical conviction with sharp business and go-to-market insights. Mike, it's really great to have you here at Deep Insights.
I finally got back.
Of course. It took you some time, but
6 years.
6 years. Wow, time flies.
Yeah.
So for those of our listeners that aren't yet familiar with Amplify, it would be great if you give us an overview of what's Amplify all about, the fund, what you guys are investing in these days.
Sure. So Amplify came from a thesis my partner and I were working on together at a previous fund. If you look in kind of the aught 2000s, if you will, and I know this is unusual in Israel, but in the US, you were almost always seeing technical founders paired with business people.
Yeah.
My partner Sunil lovingly refers to these people as the 42 long, the business CEO. And the question we started asking ourselves, we were in our previous firm, was why can't the technical founders go straight and start companies themselves? Why do you need to have this disintermediation? And as you could probably guess, that was a pretty popular concept with early technical founders at that time. But there was kind of a capital available to capital demand mismatch at that moment in time. A lot of technical founders weren't looking to raise really big rounds, but venture funds really only could work with you if you were this size. And so Sunil left to start Amplify in 2012. It took me, as always, I'm slow. It took me a couple of years to get up to speed. So I joined him in 2014. We wrapped up our first fund together, and we raised Fund 2 in 2015. The first time you and I worked together with Level, that was a Fund 2 company. Amplify just raised its sixth fund earlier this year in March. We released it this summer. It's actually 3 separate funds. It's Fund 6. It's a select fund which does follow-ons for our best companies, and then a new fund we call Bio that Sunil's heading. That's not surprisingly focused on the bio space.
Amazing. And a trick question.
Yes, please.
You have obviously a lot of portfolio companies right now over the years. Do you remember what's the smallest one and what's the biggest one that are active in your portfolio right now?
Biggest is in terms of initial check or total?
No, the company size right now. It's probably a traded company.
Well, the largest enterprise value company is Datadog. We were very early in Datadog, and so it's hard to beat Datadog right now. Their market cap is $40 or $50 billion, depending on what trading day and where you are in a market cycle. But from a check size perspective, our smallest checks where we've probably spent material time in the company is probably in the 500K range.
Yeah. And it can be as small as a 2-person team, for example?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you've been a 2-person team twice.
Yeah.
And we funded you with more money than that, though. But we funded individuals who were thinking about ideas and stuff to the tune of $300,000-$400,000 while they were thinking about stuff, all the way up to over time. I believe our largest investments in aggregate across its initial investment and follow-ons with our select funds is almost $100 million. So it's a pretty wide range.
Yeah. So it's amazing because you have seen you are actively seeing 2% companies as well as the huge enterprises, all of that.
That's right.
You have.
That's right. But to be clear, we only invest initially.
Yeah, I know.
In seed and Series A.
Of course.
And so our $400 million flagship fund is focused on being relevant for that. And we've resisted the urge to raise larger funds because our fear was, as the funds got larger, you drift farther and farther away from early stage, and you just become this Series A, B, C supermarket fund, and eventually you just become a growth fund. And I think if you look at a lot of what's happened in venture over the last 10 years, as these funds get larger, people just become really growth-oriented funds, and no one's investing in people doing new stuff.
Amazing. We will talk about that a little bit more later. Let's talk about something completely new that I have never talked about, AI, obviously.
Yeah, this is the first time I'm hearing about it.
I know. It's this new thing that kind of came out a few years ago. You have seen a few hype cycles.
Yeah.
You have seen the internet one, I would say the mobile one, cloud. Like you have seen all of those. If you compare what you are seeing right now from AI to all those three, where do you think we are in the hype cycle when it comes to AI?
It's a good question. I certainly feel like we're in the very early days of AI, but I think there's an aphorism that we exaggerate the utility of new technology in the short term, and then we underappreciate it in the long term. I'm screwing this up a little bit, but that's basically the aphorism. And I think we're definitely exaggerating what you can do with AI today, but I don't believe we're exaggerating what AI can do in the future. I mean, I always think about this with the iPhone, right? What was it, June of 2007 when Jobs launches the iPhone? The amount of hype was almost deafening, but in retrospect, we undercalled just how massive the transformation of having smartphones would be.
Yeah, the paradigm shift, yeah.
But it's not just the problem. You just think about the impact it's had on like giving people cameras all the time, right? You think about what it's done politically, socially, in societies.
Correct.
It's been a massive, massive, massive change. I have a hard time believing AI won't be that big, but it might take 10 years for us to feel it. And right now, it's just not there to have the impact commensurate with the hype that we're seeing.
It's interesting because I think we had this conversation in the past, and for a lot of founders that are starting to build companies these days, I think from my conversations, there's always a lot of FOMO kind of fear that, hey, maybe we are already too late. All the great companies are being created right now. We are missing that train. But I remember you and I had this conversation, and you thought you brought up a very good example. Said I think like, hey, mobile was like 08, 07. But like the first really big mobile-driven companies like Ubers and stuff that really leverage that, it takes much later.
That's right. I mean, because when you go back and look at the timeline of mobile, the App Store doesn't exist when it first comes out, right? The App Store is released a couple years later.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at what existed with the original iPhone relative to the iPhone ecosystem we think about today, they're very, very, very different. And so, we tend to remember like these moments in time, but we don't remember what exactly was present at that moment versus another.
Correct.
And Apple, without all the third-party apps, wouldn't have made it Apple, right? That was really what made the iPhone special. If you gave me third-party apps for my BlackBerry back in the day, it wouldn't have done me very much. I didn't use BlackBerry much for other than, I think the Brick Breakout game was the one.
It was good. Yeah.
It was a good app, but that was the only like non-business app on your phone.
Correct.
Right. Versus the iPhone is, like, for a lot of people, barely a phone. Like, you forget about the phone.
Yeah,
feature.
phone is just a feature in this device that you have.
But it's low down on the list versus
Correct.
where these started.
Amazing. So back into AI, our conversation about AI. There are obviously multiple releases of different AI models, and we are seeing like every month the new AI model. And from an investor's perspective, I'm sure you're thinking about, oh yeah, this model just came out with that capability and just erased like 10 companies in one day. How do you think about that when making new investments, of the defensibility of the company? How do you manage that risk of, hey, what if ChatGPT released a new model that did just exactly that? Like, how an investor is thinking about that in this time?
Well, I think a lot of people felt this the hard way when ChatGPT 3 came out, right? Because that was really the big step function moment where there were other products on the market that all of a sudden were obsolete overnight. I think over the last 2.5 years, we've all had a chance to kind of catch up and get a sense of what's possible now. And so you have a better idea of, at least on the current trajectory, what is and isn't possible.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting now is just especially in the Bay Area, the rumor mill of different capabilities that the different model engine companies are building, not in the core model itself, but
around
on top and around it, and trying to think about what's going to be durable for the long term. And for me, long term might be 5 to 10 years max. But I think it's pretty hard to predict what's going to be durable for 10 years out right now. And so I try to think about other things that are going to be durable, right? We don't do B2C. We're only doing B2B things. So I think a lot about what's going to be durable in terms of unique data sources that a company is working on. How are they going to own core workflow? Because those things don't change quickly. I don't remember the exact date, but I was talking to a friend of mine years ago who'd been at VMware for a long time, and he was playing a game with me about like, when did x86 surpass all other chip architectures to be the dominant enterprise architecture? And I guessed it was like in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And the answer was like 2008 or something.
Oh my God.
Right. It was like, but it just took forever to get rid of like all the legacy Spark systems.
Yeah.
Cloud. And so like legacy technologies endure much, much, much longer than you think. Like if you talk to big insurance companies in the US, one of their biggest problems is figuring out how to replace COBOL. Right. And I don't think anyone's written a net new line of COBOL for a new program since before I was born, and I'm in my 40s. Right. So in the enterprise, stuff can exist for a long time, but that durability has to be around some kind of workflow or some kind of proprietary data. Right. If you're trying to have a solution where my reasoning is better than yours, then it looks like that will be obliterated.
I see. So I think so. The bet is what type of companies can create that stickiness, that really create that value for the customer, that the customer is so happy with it that 10 years forward, maybe I'm exaggerating, but say, hey, we are good with this solution. It works really well. It brings us value. We don't want to touch it.
Yeah. And by the way, like this has been true in enterprise for a while. You always have to think about how technology is going to shift, right? If you had companies that were, again, we do infrastructure, right? So it's very VM focused, right? And then containers come out in the life of the business, and this happened to a lot of companies, right? Your value prop was degraded when containers became kind of the lingua franca as the way to deploy. So we've seen this before, just maybe not quite at this level of disruption. I think what's been interesting about AI is not just the level of disruption we're seeing from a technical perspective, but whereas in the past I think you would have seen companies be a little reticent to adopt early versions of something, right? Like think about how long it took for bring your own device to kind of break into enterprises.
Oh yeah.
Now enterprises.
It still is not an unsolved problem.
That's right. I mean, you'll sometimes see people carrying around 2 cell phones.
Of course.
Right. I think AI, because of what people have seen, there's enough people over the age of 40 who saw the internet, they saw mobile, they saw cloud, they saw the companies kind of left on the roadside as a result. No one wants to be left behind because of AI, right? I think it's, in that sense, it's impossible to catch someone kind of asleep on this, right? My kind of first order metric I'm always looking at is like, how long do you have to go in reading the Wall Street Journal before an AI article comes up? That's not like a froofy article, but a real in-depth article about someone using it. And it feels like they're almost daily now, right? It's just, you're just not catching, it's all over pop culture, right? It's in kids' schools. It's so ubiquitous that you're not going to catch someone napping in the way. There was much more of a distribution of adoption for cloud and mobile in the early days in enterprises.
Do you think some part of that is because the adoption is accelerated by the fact that it's also pure software rather than no infrastructure? Like internet, you need to have infrastructure. Right. Mobile, you need to have infrastructure. Even cloud, you need to build infrastructure. And here it's mostly a breakthrough in the software side of things.
I also think that there was such a strong consumer component to ChatGPT that it created this magic moment for a lot of people. Like I still remember my first Google search, because searching was a pain in the butt before then. And then all of a sudden you enter in your query and the answer is just right there. And I didn't use another search engine for years. I think when ChatGPT went viral, late 22, early 23 for people, it just did things that people didn't think was possible with a computer. Yeah. And so it immediately sparks this question of, well, if I can do this for this thing over here, if I can use it for, to write, a silly email
A rap song for my birthday party.
Yeah, that's right. Or debug some medical record that my doctor gave me.
Yeah.
Right.
Legal contracts.
Yeah. If I can go do that stuff personally, why am I doing this thing in my job without it?
Yeah. Do you think from an enterprise software perspective, do you think that has kind of increased the expectations of the customers now, that they kind of expect magic in every software delivered since they have experienced magic before?
Absolutely. I think one of my former colleagues wrote a blog post years ago about, in the DevOps space, it's all about mean time to pretty chart.
Yeah.
Right. From the time I install your software to the time I can get some chart that tells me, and this Datadog came out of this, like how quickly can you get to that pretty chart that gives me some insight?
That's a good KPI. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that mean time to insights got to be
very fast.
Very
seconds.
fast. Yeah, seconds. But also in the same way that Apple trained us on all how to use touchscreens, it's just such an intuitive thing. You watch it with your kids, right? And just like
they just pick it up.
They just pick it up. You don't need to explain anything to them. A chat interface that ChatGPT gave us is something that's so intuitive for people.
Yeah. You're
just using natural language to ask questions. The humans know how to do that natively.
Yeah, I think the onboarding aspect of the product becomes just zero time.
But it allows people to use that, pardon the word, to use that model when you're building other things.
Correct.
Right. So when you're building other tools, we now have an interface that we all know what to expect from. Right. If we see that kind of chat interface, we have an implicit understanding of what it can and can't do.
Cannot do, yeah.
Which we didn't have 5 years ago.
I agree. When it comes to use cases of AI for the enterprise, where are the areas that you see that there are a lot of, I would say, uncapped value, a lot of potential that still can be created?
Let's kind of define negative space.
Yeah.
So first, let's take out coding. Right? I think there are a couple people who are working on coding. So let's cut out coding, because I think that's pretty well taken care of right now.
There are many teams working on that.
Many companies working on that, and I think there are a lot of voice front ends for different things.
We talked about that, like 2 years ago when I was looking into this stuff, saying, there's something here, but they're so crowded.
Yeah, you were right that there was an opportunity with voice.
Yeah.
But I think you're seeing some stuff in verticals, you're seeing some stuff in horizontals, but my kind of first order is, if there's a job at your company that had the word agent in it, right? Like a customer support agent, for example, then the likelihood that someone's going to build a digital agent to replace you, or an AI agent to replace you, feels pretty high.
Low-hanging fruit.
I don't know if this has hit in Israel yet, but I get the volume of robocalls that hit me on a daily basis has exploded in the U.S., and a lot of them now, probably a quarter, are now AI robocalls.
I think it's also because of legislation. In the US, they are less strict when it comes to spamming / cold calling. Like in Europe, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that we allow it. But the fun part about it is that if you're curious to see what kind of state of the art is, you can play with these agents.
You can have a conversation.
Because I think there is a law that they have to self-identify, so you can ask if you're an AI.
And you have to, and
they'll say yes. You can tell just from the cadence. But that, by the way, as an aside, I think...
Well, I think the absurdness of that, if you actually talk with a real person.
Yeah.
Says, are you? I'm not.
Yeah, that would be embarrassing. I hadn't thought of that. But I think we're like 100 to 200 milliseconds away from the latency problem on AI being fixed.
Yeah, that would be fixed.
It's still like a tick too slow. Like you can feel...
And that's your cue, right?
That's my cue. Because it sounds normal, but the response time, you can hear it. You can almost hear it thinking. But when that goes away, it'll get creepy. But those are the things that I think are pretty well covered. When you look within an enterprise of like... I don't think most of the day-to-day work internally is being touched. It's being touched in the sense that people can use AI for broad-based things.
Yeah.
Like, help me with this presentation, or help me with this email, or summarize this report for me.
Yeah, simple tasks, I would call them.
But when people talk about anything agentic, I think organizations are still pretty loath to just let an AI agent have effectively read and write access to whatever it wants and do whatever it feels like it. And so you need humans still in the path.
Yeah.
And, looking at the arc that you described before with internet, mobile cloud, I think in the enterprise space, the thing I keep trying to spend time thinking about, and I think the thing a lot of people are thinking about, is rather than looking at the disruptive force of AI as like a threat to new startups, and obviously there's a threat angle to this as well, but it creates a whole new baseline of what's possible.
Yeah.
Right? You think about it a different way. If you go watch The Social Network, the interesting thing about it is to remind yourself that this is from a day when cloud didn't exist. And the whole reason why, at least according to the movie, that Mark Zuckerberg needs to befriend Eduardo Saverin is because he needs to borrow money to buy servers.
Of course.
Well, a couple of years later, that wasn't necessary. He could have easily done that on the cloud.
Correct.
Right? And the cloud made it easier for a lot of enterprise companies to build and deliver their product. Right? Amplify. Datadog's a great example. Like Datadog isn't possible in
another world.
In another world. Like it has to exist in the cloud. And so by having all of these models that are created by other people, right, and they're spending billions of dollars a year on them, tens of billions of dollars a year on them, in some cases hundreds of billions of dollars a year on them, right? We all get to benefit from that in our own bespoke places. And so I just keep trying to think about what workflows, what unique data sets exist out there that we can go disrupt and make life easier for people in those jobs. And I think if you make it easier for the people in those jobs, you will be able to create value for yourself in the same way that people absolutely asked in 2015, 2016. Remember, after every AWS reInvent, there would be a list of companies that people said Amazon just killed.
Yeah.
And then you'd come back a year later and those companies were still there. Amazon killed some stuff, but it's very rare that someone solves every horizontal and vertical problem.
I just feel, I think like the same thing. Like Amazon killed this, Microsoft killed that, OpenAI just killed this, Google just killed that. Like it's just all over again. That every time it's just like a loop. That hey, this model killed this and killed that. Like.
Well, I love to, I'm a big history person. I love to look examples in history to see what worked and what didn't. Microsoft for a long time really did two things really right? They built Windows and they built Office. And they basically used Windows to drive Office for a long time. And they obviously still make a lot of money from both. And Azure's a huge business on that. But if you look for the 80s and 90s, which were a long period of time that I lived through where Microsoft became hegemonic. Yeah. They became the biggest company in the world off of Windows and Office. But there were other things they tried to get into. They never cracked finance, right? I mean, they kept going after Intuit with Microsoft money, and they weren't able to do it. And it wasn't clear at the time why they weren't able to do it. And they weren't able to go after.
They're still trying the dynamics and say,
But up the stack for enterprise, right? They went after creatives, but never really nailed creatives. Adobe, correct. Right? Adobe really owned that space for a long time.
Yes.
Until they didn't with Figma, and you just see these stacks kind of get rebuilt every once in a while. But I have a hard time believing in AI that OpenAI, Anthropic, or Google or anybody else will be the one ring to rule them all. Right? It's just never the way things actually break out.
Yeah.
There's always a piece of something that gets left, or people understand this piece better than this other piece. Another example you see right now with NVIDIA. I think NVIDIA is obviously doing incredibly well in the data center. I think there are opportunities in other parts of the semiconductor landscape. There's the company that wins one version of a semiconductor standard never wins the next one. Like x86 to ARM, in mobile. AI in data center is NVIDIA. It's unlikely that the next thing is the thing that NVIDIA wins.
I agree.
And there's a reason that happens continually in semiconductors. There's a reason, I think, that Amazon, for all of their strength in building infrastructure efficiently and cost effectively, has struggled to build higher level apps, right? They've had some, and they've had success there certainly, but not at the same level. Snowflake exists.
I know,
right?
I agree.
And Databricks exists. And when Snowflake first came out, the comment was like, well, why can't Amazon just do this? And they did. It's Redshift.
It's still cool. Like as an entrepreneur, you get that question all the time. Why can't OpenAI do it? Why can't Amazon do it? Why can't Google do it?
Yeah.
Like, they probably could, but I think it's in their DNA to do it. They focus on other stuff.
It's very rare for all of the innovation to come from one place, even when there's a company that's innovating.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I want to connect something you said about there's a recent study by MIT. I'm sure you have heard about it, that 95% of AI pilots fail at the enterprise, and there are now there is a lot of debate on, hey, what's causing that? And it's really easy to go say, hey, the data is messy, the data is not good, and it failed because of the data. What's your take on that?
So first, I'm very curious what the baseline is of what's the standard failure rate for enterprise POCs, but 95% would be pretty high. I was surprised the number was that big when I saw that study. I think it's a couple things. One, I think it's this expectation problem that we were talking about before. When your expectation is magic,
so high, it's
right?
Show me the magic.
I also think we're in a moment in time where every enterprise feels like they have to do something with AI, but they don't know what something is. It's there's a great scene in Spaceballs where it's this chain of just everyone shouting, "Do something" at the next person. You can just see CEOs reading, something like the Wall Street Journal or hearing an anecdote about something, and just just turning to their organizations and saying, you over there, go implement AI, and they're like, okay, and then people go and bring a lot of AI into the organization, but it's not problem driven, it's tech driven, and so I suspect a big problem that we're seeing in these POCs, and there's lots of other technical issues I think that exist, but I think there's a huge cultural problem, which is if you don't know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, right? You're just going to bring in and you're trying to solve a tech first problem.
Yeah.
Oh, startup companies love showing you tech. So there's going to be a lot of people that just show up with like, hey, we got this cool thing. And then people like, that is really impressive.
That is really cool.
And then, as a founder, this, like you have to qualify your customers. I think there are a lot of people who are not qualifying fast enough to ask like, hey, what's the problem you're trying to solve here? And do you have budget for this? And
I think even more than I think the AI has blurred when it comes the border between really strong teams creating value with other teams. It enables anyone to build something that looks cool. And it was much harder to build something that worked at that level before, but now almost anyone can do that. So there is way more noise when it comes to different tools. And it's really, I think anyone can create something that is my take. It's much easier to create something that seems to work, but implementing it actually in an enterprise when there are so many different requirements, it just fails at money time.
Yeah, I think that's right. I also think there is a data problem for a lot of these, right? It's probably a data problem both in the terms of like, is that particular instantiation trained and tuned on the model or on the data that's relevant for your business?
Yeah.
So that the results are as magical as you're expecting. Because I think the problem is if you're used to stuff in a public domain, right? Like I'm using ChatGPT for sports questions or whatever, pop culture stuff.
Which is what it's built for.
And then I go and start using it, internally at my company.
There's a big P&L. Yeah.
There's a big data asymmetry in terms of what it knows.
Yeah.
I think there's data security and privacy problems that people probably run into pretty quickly. But then I also think you just have this problem. What am I trying to use this for, right? And I think there's a big issue that I've seen of people presupposing a problem. Sorry, and there's one other one, but people presupposing I need to use AI here without really thinking through all the different instantiations.
Yeah.
And then I know you've seen this with your company. But I also just think there is a data access problem, right? Data access in terms of like, I'm not sure I want to give you access to that. Or I'll give you, if it's an agentic thing, am I going to give you read and write access? Write access is, I don't give a lot of humans write access to my data.
I-
I'm gonna give you write access to my data.
Totally.
And in what situations am I going to give you write access?
How can I of course trust you to do the right thing?
That's right. And then on, kind of overlaying all of this is the hallucination problem.
Yeah, that's
right. And I know OpenAI has recently released a paper saying, hey, they think they may have figured out where the problem is.
Yeah.
Color me skeptical on that.
I mean, these are statistical models. They have statistical behavior. At some point, like that statistics doesn't lie. It's not 100%.
Yeah.
It will happen either way.
But I think people understand that. But there are other problems where you just see answers hallucinate. And anyone who's played with these models for any amount of time will see these hallucinations where you get into these conversations with the chat, and it just feels like you're talking to someone who has short-term memory loss. It's like, no, we just talked about this. Like, how are you confused? Like you're doing the same wrong thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And I'm asking you a factual question. Like, what's the capital of this country? And half the time you're getting it wrong because you've gotten somewhere in this loop where you're confused.
Yeah. For example, what you said, this is something that businesses cannot really deal with. Like, they cannot have something that, like, even not 50, half of the time. If it was even like 5% of the time, if you give right access to something that 5% of the time you messes up, you're done.
You know a lot more about this than me, but I dabbled in comm theory in undergrad. You got a PhD in it, so you're better at it than me. But like, our whole communications infrastructure is built on this.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. Like, the reason why your cell phones work, or the reason why fiber optics work, is because we built a really strong encoding system to make sure that the bit that was received was the bit that was sent.
They can overcome it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was really Qualcomm's genius, right? Those guys made billions of dollars personally because they invented coding technologies that allowed them.
The Viterbi algorithm, yeah.
Yeah. He did okay. I had to learn that in college. But Jacobs and all those guys, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the QAM processing that we see and all of that came out, right?
Yeah.
Out of that originally. I suspect at some point in time, we start to figure out ways to not to bring to zero, but to massively reduce hallucinations in certain scenarios and give people confidence, right? Because that's the other thing that you do in comm theory, right? Is it's if you know you're in a lossy channel, right? There are techniques you can use to just increase your confidence that the answer that you're getting is better.
I think, and I think one important thing there is that what's the, I think what they call it in the information theory, like capacity. You know what can be done, and like what's the maximum that can be achieved in that scenario, and you know that below that you're going to be okay, and above that. So there is actually a very hard mathematic proof of, hey, this is possible, and if you're in this area, it's going to be okay. If we went to that area, it's not okay. And I think we're not there yet with AI, so we know what are the areas that are really defined that this thing works well. So we know that if we are there, we're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think, I suspect, at least in the near term, if not for the near medium term, the way this also gets solved is a human in the loop.
Definitely, I agree.
And I think that's also relevant because I just think practically, if you're trying to sell a product to people where the end goal is you don't exist anymore as an employee, there's just really no incentive for that person to approve the product.
Not the best way to sell someone something.
Yeah, you're in the Bay Area. We have Waymo. No one's asking Uber what they think of Waymo.
Yeah.
Right. That would be a weird way of selling it. And there are some companies I see where the people who are the buyers are the exact people they're trying to obviate. And so I think approaching a lot of these problems from the perspective of, think about spreadsheets in the early days. I mean, spreadsheet really was the killer app for the PC.
Yeah.
In the 80s, right? Word processors existed. Word processing was better on a computer, but spreadsheets, people had never seen it before, right? I mean, you just think about what bookkeeping looks like if you have to do it manually versus when you have a computer. People inside companies making better decisions, making decisions more quickly. I like to use the expression heroing, right? Making people heroes. I think the companies that are able to do that will be the most successful because they will inject themselves deeply within a workflow and become indispensable. And then I think it becomes much, much harder for them to get pulled out.
Yeah, it's much harder to get them out.
And by the way, the people that end up adopting those tools that are successful, those will be the people that end up running the organizations.
Correct.
That you're selling into. and they'll be loyal to those companies. And so I think there is value there.
Amazing. Couple of last questions. As a VC, how do you use, if you use AI in your job at Amplify? What are the areas that AI has kind of transformed the way that you work as a VC?
Yeah, so there's stuff I use it for today, and there's stuff that I play with as a toy. I'd say like the workflows that I'm never going back. Anytime I have to do any kind of blog writing or semi-creative writing, I use AI to help write it for me. I wrote a couple blog posts recently. They were my most read blog post I'd ever written before. And the thing that amused me was the pieces that I got the most compliments for were the pieces the AI wrote.
Don't tell anyone.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. You're not supposed to say that. I'm sorry.
So that's number one, I also wasn't writing much anymore, and AI kind of locked that for me. And then any kind of research, obviously, like the ability to do deep research on a topic, right? Because in venture, you're always reading about new companies or new technologies, and they're just in spaces you're always against someone, or you're talking to someone who's just much, much deeper in the domain than you are.
Yeah.
So how do you get smart?
Fast.
Having AI write a prompt for me that I can then feed back into deep research to understand a space, get a 20-page paper, right? You skim the whole thing, and then there's a couple sections where you're like, oh, this is interesting. I want to understand more about this. So you go back and learn more about that thing. That's super helpful. Those two workflows for me are pretty hard and fast. I'm always looking for new tools to help me do not identification of like new companies so much as it's just trends and things that are interesting. So, trying to code up different agents to find new things that are taking place in different areas, be it from a research perspective or open source perspective, hacker news, whatever it is, but just identifying. So I think of it almost as like Google alerts on steroids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Persistent alerts that aren't just like, tell me when there's news about my company, but much more specific. And then the other one that I keep playing with is building agents to give me information about stuff I'm doing tomorrow. Right?
Oh, that's good.
Right.
As a prep.
I mean, I feel like there have been companies that started over the years about some sort of sales dossier for the person you're talking to tomorrow, but I know what I do manually if I have the time before I meet somebody, right? And so if I know what I can do manually, I should be able to build an agent that does that for me. And it's
correct.
Between scraping LinkedIn and doing internet searches, and it's like if someone was on a blog recently, I didn't know they were on a blog, and it'd be good to know they wrote a blog or they're on a podcast. It'd be good to know about that and what they said.
Yeah, what their angle is, yeah.
Right. What's relevant to what I'm talking to them about today. Like any of that stuff, if they're speaking somewhere. All the sorts of stuff that, again, if you had the time, if you only had one meeting tomorrow and it was an important meeting,
that would do it,
right? Like if you were interviewing for a job you really wanted, you do a lot of research. And none of the research is that hard, right?
It just takes a lot of time.
It just takes time. AI can do that stuff easily today, but the filtering and for me today, it's still a click noisy. I haven't tuned my agent to the point where it gives me the information that I want, but I keep playing with it because we'll get it there. Those are my workflows today. But venture's a pretty simple job from a workflow perspective. And relative to other jobs I had, it's among the simplest workflows that I've had. So I don't know that I'm the best example. I'm fascinated. Oh, actually, sorry. My favorite workflow that I use AI for is figuring out how to show my kids steps and how to solve a math problem.
Oh, that's nice.
When I know what the answer is, but I'm trying to think about how to explain it to them,
in an intuitive way.
In an intuitive way relative to their grade level and what they understand in a way that they can replicate it.
Yeah, I've heard that a few times.
So as a dad, that's a favorite one for me.
Makes sense. You talked about Excel. That was one of the best applications. I claim that it is still one of the best applications when it's come.
I mean, if you think about best piece of software ever written, right? If you're like, what's the most powerful, useful pieces of software ever written? Like if I came to you at almost any point in the last 30 years, if Excel didn't exist, and I said, I'm going to give you a tool, and it can act as your accounting tool, it can act as your analytics tool, It can act as a CRM.
Just a list, whatever.
Like, it's just.
I think you talked about before about Amplify and different teams and size, and you say, hey, we have 2-person teams and we have like enterprises in our portfolio. I bet one thing that is common among all of them is they are using Excel in some way or other for their financial management, planning, like all of them. Like that's probably the only thing that they all have in common.
I mean, you being able to use a spreadsheet is basically as ubiquitous now as email.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like you can't, almost doesn't matter what job you have, you can't function without. And by the way, even if I'm trying to think of a job in knowledge worker space where you're never touching a spreadsheet, because I think engineers still end up building spreadsheets too. In the off chance you're an engineer that does need a spreadsheet at work,
maybe graphic designers. Like
you probably have a spreadsheet. But you
have
a spreadsheet
of you have for logging hours or clients or something. You
at some point you're
I agree.
doing an invite list to a party and you end up making a spreadsheet.
I agree,
because it's much better than doing it in a Word doc.
One of the most ubiquitous pieces of software.
Yeah, I Google is pretty useful. It's a different, if you try to encapsulate it as a piece of software, ChatGPT, but the endurance of Excel, as long it's an incredible program.
Yeah, and I've seen many I think AI companies trying to compete with it, or like in FP&A field, many of them trying to replace Excel in some sense. I never understood why. Like that seems to me like a lost battle before it even started. Like how easy it's just really for a certain task. It's still maybe AI can have a impact there by automating some of that, but even then I don't see like a lot of. I think it's why FP&A has become a really hard space to win at, or really build really big companies at, is because at their base, many of them try to compete to replace Excel, and there are people like, hey, why I use Excel for that?
For the foreseeable future, especially in anything in FP&A land, but I think in still lots of jobs where the spreadsheet is a source of truth.
Yeah. Right.
And trying to come in, especially with AI, and disrupt the source of truth, I think that's a losing battle.
Yeah.
Certainly while anyone who's used AI for more than a minute has seen it hallucinate, right? Right. I mean, there are cases where AI doesn't hallucinate, but it's harder to see the AI running, right?
Yeah. I mean,
you don't see it with a Google search. You don't see it with self-driving in a car, right? You know, AI is running in Waymos. They crash far less than human. Even Teslas crash far less than human-driven cars when Teslas are running in autopilot. But the hallucination that you see in any kind of ChatGPT, Claude type environment,
and compared to, I would say, the confidence and the reliability that you have on something in Excel, and you also make a lot of mistakes. But yet, I think you're right that trying to replace that is a losing battle. I think it makes much more sense to try to leverage it and use it and try to make them work together rather than just replacing it.
Yeah, I think that's also the big difference between AI versus the other 3 trends that you mentioned. The other 3 trends were much more of a replace type of technology.
Yeah.
Like cloud wasn't, yes, there was hybrid, but cloud, you were either running an application on-prem or you're running it in the cloud. There was no
in between.
There was no in between. AI, in a lot of ways, is augmenting today.
Yes,
it will replace later. But today,
that's a good observation.
Today, it's much more of a plus.
Yeah.
Right. It may not be linear. It may be a super linear function, but it's gonna be. I'm gonna supercharge this capability that you already had.
That's a very interesting observation. It's not coming to replace something so clearly, rather than augmenting what's possible.
Yeah, I mean, what was so interesting watching the .com boom at the time was, you would just have people in disbelief saying, how could Amazon be worth more than every single brick and mortar bookstore stock on the planet? That can't be right. Well, actually, it turned out to be very right. In fact, it was, in retrospect, ludicrous that we weren't selling stock in Borders instantaneously, because the book you bought at Borders, became was exactly the same as the book that you're buying on Amazon. You didn't need to try it on, or
no,
clothes are trickier. Like there was nothing you needed to do other than just
order it.
Just to order it.
Yeah, I agree. Last question.
Yep.
If AI could do one thing perfectly for you, one thing but perfectly, what would it be?
That's a really good question.
Like you say, hey, this task, like if I could give AI this do this for me and it got it right, my life would change.
Differently. I think the self-awareness of AI to recognize when it does or doesn't know how to do something.
Oh yeah.
It's not the hallucination piece. I'm actually okay with that. More so that it's like the lack of a confidence interval in the answer.
Just to say I don't know.
That's the thing we kind of have as humans, right? If you're talking to someone who's being somewhat honest with you.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise you're in like this labyrinth riddle, right? Of like one person always lies and one person always tells the truth. What questions you have to ask, right? If I'm asking, hey, can you help me with this problem? It always tells me yes.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I uncover that actually you can't.
Yeah.
But I have to interrogate it to figure it out. And so that means I can't automate those processes because I have to be there in real time to figure out if it knows what it's talking about, if it can go do this thing. But if you could ask an AI, hey, can you do this? And it could tell you with a very high confidence rate, yes, I can, or no, I can't. Just that alone would let me take a whole swath of things and say, okay, I can automate these things.
I understand.
Right? Because I think a lot of the other stuff that people are asking for today, I'll say broadly around accuracy, because hallucinations is an accuracy problem. I think we'll get more accurate models for free in different places over time.
Yeah, we will.
In some places it'll be more accurate, in some places faster.
It will take some time, but we will get there.
Right. But the AI having this like self-awareness of whether it's well suited to solve this problem.
Or that's a good call. That's a very good call. That's a very good answer.
I would that would be, by the way, that would also be very scary, because if AI can do that, then what do you need us for?
Thank you for that. And with that, I thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for the discussion. And until next time.
Until next time.
Thank you.